So, good morning, or good afternoon, or good evening, wherever you are in the world. Talent Finders would like to welcome entrepreneur and founder of Diffuse, Vanessa Carson. So, welcome, Vanessa.
Thank you.
So, Vanessa, congratulations on all your achievements. Could you share with us how your entrepreneurial journey began and give us some background on Diffuse?
Sure. I wanted to create a simplified system to manage my family scheduling as well as reduce a lot of the noise in the communication that tends to fly back and forth between separated parents. And so essentially, it was a bit of a light bulb moment because I do like to bounce ideas off. Um, Certain friends in case communication escalates. So rather than, checking in with third parties, I thought, why don't we create a space where we can contain all of the communication and implement a tool using AI, because I've been working in the digital space for many years, that can support in conflict de-escalation and manage logistics at the same time.
Yeah, that's amazing, and obviously something that's very much needed, especially with when people are in those situations. So, before starting your business, you worked across a diverse, you worked across diverse industries like pharma, media, technology, and finance. Do you think that that experience helped you build a stronger foundation in your startup?
Sure. The entire basis for building diffuse is efficiency. And working in large organizations, my role tended to be organizational optimization
Yes.
of digital processes. So the idea behind Thea, which is our AI tool, is to create efficiency is not really the correct word, but create efficiencies within the communication so
Yes.
that the tool does the emotional heavy lifting so that you can focus on to, to be to simplify getting on with your day rather than worrying about he said what, she said what within the communication.
Yes.
Um, it takes all of the emotion out of it and just reduces it back to logistics and practicality. However, within that, because there's no negative language, it doesn't, there's no negative reinforcement. And the idea is to move towards a more positive reframing of of the current situation and also moving from past grievances. So it's ultimately an efficiency tool, but also slightly leaning towards a more healing space, I
Yes.
guess one way of putting it.
Yeah.
We don't claim to be a counseling tool at this point, although we do have the idea that there will be services attached to that, but that's not what the tool is built for. It's not a counselor per se, more like a mediation tool.
Yes, absolutely. So problem solving is one of your strengths. So do you think this skill stems from your corporate experience, and how has it given you an edge in your business?
Yes, I mean it's definitely problem solving. Building something like this is almost you can liken to putting a puzzle together.
Yes.
Um, so it's building a system, and as I said, we're building an ecosystem more so than just an app or just a platform, because there are certain elements that feed into this ecosystem. We're building a community around it. At phase two will be physical events, but essentially with the app itself, as I mentioned, is part of the ecosystem. It is a puzzle that fits together with certain modules and certain elements. So that's how it all came about. It is solving a problem. So yes, definitely related to my corporate background in project management and program management.
Yeah, no, that's amazing. And then, just to elaborate on that point is obviously having, or, being in the process of, continually developing it. Did you speak to other parents or other people that were going through this, and then, maybe they gave you some feedback as to what would be helpful within the app, or, applying certain things. So I'm just curious if anybody sort of within the circle of people that you connected with, you know, asked you to cover or bring in certain elements that would be helpful within the app itself.
So yes, one of the biggest contentions between not just separated parents, but between humans is communication.
Yes, big time.
The minute there's a communication breakdown, everything falls apart. That is, that's a universal challenge.
Yes.
So, in terms of narrowing it down to separated parents, I spoke to one particular person I spoke to who is she's a coach in this space, and I said to her, what's the biggest challenge? And she also agreed. She said the biggest challenge that all of her clients and her friends as well as my friends that come to her, it's with emails or phone calls or text messages or whatever means of communication that you're using with your co-parent. It comes down to acrimonious communication. So I thought, okay, brilliant. How can we solve for that? And if you have an intermediary, if you have a buffer against that, it makes life a lot lighter, because
Yes.
one of the biggest challenges is that anxious feeling in the pits of your stomach when you have an email that comes out of the blue, or it's, you're not expecting, to think, okay, now what? And then, yes, it invariably snowballs from there. And I thought,
Yeah.
how can we mitigate for that? And that's where Thea came into it, because even if you get that email, then what Thea will do is will formulate and write your answer for you based on the prompts that's being given. You can choose the tone of voice, you can choose the situation, and then Thea will feed back. And then over time,
Mm.
because the language is reframed in a more positive light, then the person on the receiving end of it, essentially your co-parent, will also through NLP, which is neuro-linguistic programming, because that's the principle upon which Thea is based. They will also take it will also help alleviate their frustration and whatever negative emotion they may have towards the situation. So it will, try and alleviate some of the stress and pressure on both sides, even if the other parent is not exactly receptive to the idea of using a co-parenting app. It benefits both parties.
Yes. So obviously, I wanted, you've given quite a lot of insight, into Diffuse itself, but it's an innovative solution and personal to you as a parent, as you've mentioned. So could you say why you created it, or what it means for parents, especially those co-parenting, and the problems that it solves? So
Yeah.
you did touch on a few, but I think just to elaborate for people that don't necessarily know that something like this exists.
Yes, so when when if you're co-parenting, and this goes for all parents, this is not just a tool for high conflict situations or separated parents. If there's stress within the household, you cannot be fully present for your children, because if you're worrying about one thing, which they're worries, and that's just life. But when there are unnecessary additional concerns or worries that don't need to be present within the household, it makes it that much more frustrating for whichever parent the children happen to, whichever household they happen to be in. If you can remove that unnecessary concern and unnecessary stress, then you can be fully present for your children. And it just creates a much more harmonious space for them. And that is essentially the point of developing this, is to create a harmonious household across both households. So whilst it's still for the co-parents, well-being and mental health and stress alleviation, essentially the children are at the forefront of all of this. So I guess in terms of my journey, rather than worrying about unnecessary stresses, I would build an app that would allow parents to thrive, I guess, instead of focusing on the negative and the acrimony or whatever conflict from historic conflict, is just to try and remove that entirely, because it's history. So
Yes,
Yes,
exactly.
history. So,
Exactly. And I'm just curious, like, would this also aid p people, that have either going through the separation or divorced already, like just in terms of keeping track from a legal perspective? Is this something that can be utilized in terms of it's again not saying, well, he said, she said, or whatever, but just if the information, like you say, is being consolidated and there are things in terms of communication that need to be addressed from a legal standpoint, is this something that people can then obviously say, well, we have the central communication and this is how, and so if they need to use it, in terms of addressing something legally, is that something that comes into it or not really?
we're in beta at the moment, so the technology is there. We have the roadmap, and yes, that's definitely included.
Okay.
However, having said that, it will be modular because not all parents actually are at the point where they need legal intervention.
Hmm.
And the whole thinking behind Thea is to avoid escalation, avoid having to engage with the court process.
Okay.
That's not always possible. But yes, it is part of the roadmap over the next couple of months. And that will be a modular, we're doing, a pretty standard templates, guidance on how to structure certain documents, and then an archiving system.
Amazing. So, what would you say have been some of your biggest career highlights?
Well, I used to work in the film industry many years ago in Cape Town, and being on set was quite a lot of fun, actually.
Yes.
So, yeah, it's a bit of a deviation from that, but I really used to enjoy that, working on commercials over the summer. I didn't do that for very long because I left and came to London.
Amazing. And then talking about some of your biggest lessons that you've learned. So maybe within your career, you've had multiple, but what really stands out for you?
Fail fast. I know it's a bit of a cliche, but when things aren't working, pivot as soon as possible. Don't dwell on the negatives. Just keep moving forward.
Yes. So in our fast-paced, tech-driven world, how has AI impacted Diffuse, and what sets it apart?
Well, AI has been fundamental to the differentiator, I guess, from some of the other co-parenting apps. Um, I studied linguistics and semiotics and semiology at university, so I
Yes.
think meeting my developer specializes in natural language processing was a huge part of understanding how language shapes how we view the world
Yes.
and how we shape our reality. And that's not the same for any two people. It is a very individual, it's very individual. So having an understanding of that is how we translated that across into how we engineered Thea,
Yes.
because every single word carries meaning, and that meaning can be interpreted very differently by any individual. So we were very careful in how we structured the engineering, and how we built the parameters.
Yes.
Because we have to be conscious that one word can have an enormous impact on somebody, whereas somebody else will not even think about it. So
Yeah. Yeah. So
yeah,
it's just understanding the sensitivities.
exactly. And then also how the natural language processes are, how they and how they process language, is obviously, at the forefront of everything that we're doing.
Yes, absolutely. And so what would you say your ultimate vision for diffusers? Like what's your biggest, goal or mission? Um, and where do you
It,
see yourself?
besides the healing therapeutic aspects of Thea, the community side of it is very important to me.
Yes.
My eldest daughter is 21, and when I was parenting her,
Mm.
there was a lot more of community spirit around playgroups, and a lot of that's been lost in London through COVID. So just sort of rebuilding that in that space. I mean, it's we're 5 years on now, so I think things are starting to normalize, but building it in a space for co-parents and reframing the narrative that it doesn't have to be, you don't have to be restricted by your circumstances.
Mm.
Um, you can progress and you can build and you can create something quite special, whether that's I'm not likening it to diffuse now. I'm talking about rebuilding your life after separation.
Yes,
Uh, so that's sort of the ultimate goal is to empower and inspire other co-parents who may be having a bit of a challenging time and wondering if there is light at the end of the tunnel, I suppose.
yes.
Because it's not like that for all co-parents. Some co-parents are, they get along brilliantly, and it's um, not, none of this is an issue for them. So that's fantastic, and that's the ultimate goal, to have separated households co-parenting without any of the acrimony.
Animosity.
Yeah, animosity, that's the word I'm looking
Yeah,
for.
yeah.
Because it is possible. I've seen it more
Yes.
than more than I've seen the conflict. But when conflict is an issue, it is extremely detrimental for the children. They will model that. They will, because children they absorb everything.
Yeah, no, way more than we even realize.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And so then they will carry that on, and then they will have challenges based on the issues that they've experienced. So it's to try and eliminate any trauma as far as possible.
Yes, absolutely. So, with that being said, what are the three key pieces of advice you would give to aspiring entrepreneurs, either to look in pursuing a similar career or just in general, advice for people that are aspiring to be entrepreneurs?
Taking that risk is not that scary, although it is daunting. And then also, if you have an idea, that the team will find you. I mean, I've had the most amazing team around me.
Hmm.
Um, they've been absolutely just brilliant, and I met them sort of. It was just synchronicity. So yes, your team will find you. And then thirdly, yes, I think if you do what you love, everything else will follow, even though it's easier to think, oh, I'll just fit into the systems that are there already. There is I think a lot of value in trying to build your own systems, because not one size fits all.
No,
And I think
exactly. Exactly.
as the world is starting to discover.
Yes, exactly. And there's enough division as it stands. So
Exactly.
lastly, what legacy would you like to leave, or how would you like to be remembered?
Um,
I know that's a loaded question, but
um, I guess I want to be remembered as building something positive, something that had, a real societal impact that was, I hate the expression catalyst for change,
yeah, yeah.
but that sounds a bit grandiose, but even if a tiny part of if diffuse can play a tiny part in that, then I think that would be something I would probably like to be remembered for.
That's amazing. Well, thank you so much, Vanessa, for joining us today. And hopefully, we can have you back in the future to see where you are in your journey. So, if people would like to connect with you, what are the best platforms to do so?
We have all the usual Instagram threads, my LinkedIn, our website,
So, if you could
and
just give the name, or just so people know, is it just at Diffuse, or is
oh, so no, our Instagram handles we are Diffuse, and the website's www.diffuse.io.
wonderful? Well, thank you for joining us. And yeah, we'll have you back for sure in the future. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Karen.